Hello, my name is Jian Park. Today I'll be introducing the paper Proxy 3D, Efficient 3D Representations for Vision Language Models via Semantic Clustering and Alignment. The paper was published in CVPR 2026. The field of this paper is known as 3D Vision Language Modeling or Spatial Intelligence for Multimodal Large Language Models. Traditional vision language models usually receive one or more two-dimensional images and answer questions about their visual content. However, real-world agents, such as robots and embodied AI systems, must understand their surroundings as a consistent 3D-dimensional space. A 3D vision language model must combine observations from multiple camera views and understand object locations, distances, directions, and spatial relationships. Therefore, the goal of this field is to enable a language model to reason about an entire physical environment rather than interpreting each image independently. The previous methods of the field can be divided into two broad categories. The first category is correspondence-based methods. These approaches use multi-view image matching, cross-frame attention, reconstruction objectives, or positional encoding to learn relationships between different views. Their advantage is that they can directly use ordinary images or video frames. However, their understanding of 3D space remains mostly implicit. A model may correctly interpret individual frames but still fail to construct a consistent global representation of the room. These methods may therefore suffer from spatial inconsistencies and weak global scene understanding. The second category is representation-based methods. These methods explicitly construct a 3D representation using point clouds, depth maps, Gaussian splats, scene graphs, or reconstructed features. They provide stronger geometric grounding, but explicit 3D scenes can contain an extremely large number of points or features. Since the language model processes information as a sequence, these representations must be converted into a manageable number of tokens. This creates a trade-off. Using more tokens preserves scene details but increases computation, while using fewer tokens improves efficiency but may remove important objects or spatial relationships. Based on these limitations, the authors define the main research question as follows. How can we construct a compact sequence of visual tokens that retains accurate semantic and spatial information about a complete 3D scene? The representation should preserve what objects are present, where they are located, and how they relate to one another, while remaining small enough to be processed efficiently by a language model. To address this problem, the authors propose Proxy 3D. Their main observation is that visual information in a scene is highly repetitive. A scene may contain thousands of image patches, but many of them correspond to repeated observations of the same chair, table, wall, or cabinet. Proxy 3D therefore groups semantically and spatially related features and replaces them with a smaller number of representative 3D proxy tokens. This slide gives the complete Proxy 3D pipeline at a high level. The model begins with multiple RGB frames from the same scene. Then, it extracts three types of information from the images: patch-level visual features, pixel-level 3D point maps, and pixel-level segmentation maps. The dense geometry and mask outputs are then patchified so that they correspond to the visual feature grid. This creates patch-level elements containing visual information, 3D position, and a semantic label. Proxy 3D then compresses these elements into a much smaller set of 3D proxy tokens. Finally, the proxies are ordered, combined with spatial and object reference embeddings, and passed to the language model. I will now explain how the three feature types are extracted and aligned. The three encoders produce information at different resolutions. The visual encoder creates a low-resolution grid of patch features, whereas the geometry predictor and segmentation model produce dense pixel-level outputs. Proxy 3D patchifies the point maps and masks according to the visual encoder's patch size. After this alignment, every visual patch has three components: a visual feature, 3D spatial information, and a semantic or instance label. When multiple mask labels appear inside one patch, the method assigns the label of the object occupying the largest area. The result is an aligned patch-level representation that tells the model what is visible, where it is located, and which object or semantic region it belongs to. However, because these patches come from many frames, the representation is still highly redundant. The right side of the figure shows the main compression mechanism. Proxy 3D first groups the aligned patches according to their semantic or instance labels. It then clusters patches spatially within each group and replaces each cluster with one representative proxy feature and coordinate. This semantic first strategy reduces repeated observations while avoiding the accidental merging of nearby but different objects. The number of proxies is allocated dynamically. Larger groups receive more proxies, while smaller ones are still guaranteed some representation. After clustering, the proxies form an unordered set. Proxy 3D uses breadth-first search over the 3D group centers so that spatially nearby regions also appear near one another in the token sequence. Finally, explicit spatial information is added using rope and Fourier embeddings, while semantic and identifier embeddings allow the model to connect proxies with object categories and references such as OBJ001. The resulting compact sequence is then provided to the language model for querying. In order to effectively form spatial understanding in MLLMs, the authors developed a progressive iterative training scheme called multi-stage training. The figure on the left presents an overview to how the language model learns to interpret the proxy sequence. Instead of immediately training on complex real scene features, the authors use four progressive stages. In the first stage, the model learns the relationship between object categories, object identifiers, and language tokens. In the second stage, it learns coordinate alignment by predicting the 3D positions of identified objects. In the third stage, it learns spatial relationships such as left, right, above, or below. Finally, the simplified representations are replaced with actual 3D proxy features extracted from RGB scenes. This gradual process helps transfer basic object and spatial knowledge to the final proxy representation. To support this training strategy, the authors curate a dataset called Spacespan. Spacespan contains approximately 18,100 training examples collected from several existing 3D datasets. The data is converted into a unified format so that one model can be trained on multiple tasks. The dataset includes ordinary question answering, visual grounding, dense captioning, object referencing, coordinate prediction, and object-to-object spatial relationship questions. The authors argue that this unified dataset is important because existing 3D vision language training dataset is limited and highly fragmented across different tasks. This slide explains the training setup used for the experiments section. The language model backbone used in the experiments is QN 2.5VL7B. VGGT is used for geometry prediction and SAM2 is used for segmentation. In the main comparison, Proxy 3D represents each scene using approximately 700 visual tokens. The model is evaluated on ScanQA and SQA, ScanRefer and Multi3D-Refer, Scan2Cap, and VSI Bench for various spatial intelligence tasks. This slide presents the results for the overall 3D scene understanding experiments conducted on ScanQA and SQA3D benchmarks for tasks including question answering, visual grounding, and dance captioning. The key point is that Proxy 3D achieves competitive performance while using a much shorter visual sequence. Many correspondence-based methods use around 8,000 visual tokens. In contrast, Proxy 3D uses only about 700 tokens. And despite this compression, it performs competitively on ScanQA and SQA3D and shows strong visual grounding results on ScanRefer and Multi-3D Refer. However, its dense captioning performance on Scan2Cap is weaker than some correspondence-based methods, suggesting that compact proxy representations may lose some fine-grained descriptive details. This slide presents the results for the spatial reasoning experiments conducted on the VSI benchmark. It evaluates Proxy 3D on a broader set of 3D spatial reasoning tasks. Proxy 3D achieves the second best average rank among the open source models. It performs especially well on object counting, absolute distance estimation, object size reasoning, and relative direction. However, the table also shows that all current models remain far below human-level spatial intelligence. This is especially clear in difficult tasks such as route planning and appearance order reasoning. Therefore, Proxy 3D improves efficiency in spatial reasoning, but it does not fully solve complex 3D reasoning. This slide presents the results for the main component ablation experiment. It analyzes the effects of semantic grouping, coordinate alignment, feature map resolution, interframe attention, and proxy token length. The most important result is the effect of semantic grouping. When semantic grouping is removed, visual grounding performance drops significantly. This suggests that clustering should not be performed globally over all patches because nearby but different objects may be incorrectly merged. Coordinate alignment also improves performance, especially for tasks that depend on accurate geometry. The table further shows that increasing feature map resolution and the number of proxy tokens can improve performance, although the gains are relatively modest. Overall, the experiment demonstrates the trade-off between computational efficiency and representation accuracy. This slide presents the results for dynamic proxy allocation experiment. It tests how the number of proxies assigned to a target object affects Scan2Cap performance. The best result is obtained when 5 proxies are allocated. Using only 2 proxies may not preserve enough object detail. However, increasing the number to 10 does not improve performance. The authors suggest that too many proxies can become less informative and may create an imbalance in how the model represents different objects. This experiment shows that proxy allocation affects not only efficiency, but also the quality of object-level information. While effective, Proxy 3D still has several important limitations to be addressed. First, it depends on multiple pre-trained components, including the visual encoder, VGGT, and SAM2. If the segmentation model separates one object incorrectly or the geometry predictor estimates inaccurate coordinates, those errors directly affect the generated proxies. Second, compression inevitably removes information. This may explain why Proxy 3D performs less strongly on dense captioning, which requires detailed visual descriptions. Third, the multi-stage training pipeline is relatively complicated and requires specially constructed identifier, coordinate, and relationship data. The experiments also mainly focus on indoor scenes, so it is unclear how well the method would generalize to outdoor or dynamic environments. Finally, there is still a large gap between Proxy 3D and human performance, especially for route planning and appearance order reasoning. Thank you.